Okay, so we have a sikh over here from Thursday night, Parsazinu Vav Tishrei, Tafshin Lamed Gimel. We're going to skip around some parts of the sikha, but it connects Aseres Yemai Teshuvah with the idea of Simcha, as well as connecting the idea of, at the end, Vav Tishrei, a yard site, with an idea of Simcha as well. Aleph. Oidus Yichudam Shal Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, about the uniqueness of the 10 days of repentance. Va'afilu Shivas Hayom Shebein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim. Even the 7 days that are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. In other words, when we talk about Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, it includes Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So here we're going to talk about the uniqueness, what the specialness only of the days that are like the weekdays between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We may call Hashanah Kulo. Over all the days of the year, Yesh Kama Biyurim Bekama Sfarim. There are different explanations, many different Sfarim, and Benigla, and Benisr, Bepnimis HaTorah, both in the revealed part of Torah and the concealed part of Torah, the inner part of Torah, Benigel in Yonam, Shal Yomim El, concerning the concept of these days. Ve'echad mehem hu amuvar b'sidr ha'arizal. One of the ideas of these days, the 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, is what's brought down in the Sidra of the Arizal. Now, the rest of this piece that we're going to skip is really talking about the significance, how the following statement has significance to us. Usually, the Sidra of the Arizal has a lot of Kabbalah in it, etc. And essentially, the Rebbe says that it brings from someone that has to do with the Reishis Chachma, and it also brings down from Rabbeinu Yoina, Rishon, and it also connects it with the Arizal. So everybody, anyone can find a part over here that relates to him, because either he relates to the Arizal, or he relates to Reishis Chachma, or he relates to Rabbeinu Yoina. So we skipped over to the top of the next page, second paragraph. This is what it says in the Arizal Siddur. Kasav Bal Reishis Chachma B'Shem Aramakzal, the author of the sefer called Reishis Chachma, wrote in the name of the Mekubal Rav Moshe Kederevu, Ki Hayomim Shebein Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim Hem K'may Chol Hamoed. The days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are like the days of Chol Hamoed, like the middle of Sukkot we have Chol Hamoed, in the middle of Pesach we have Chol Hamoed. V'asurim b'mlacha, and they're prohibited in doing work. This is not a halacha sefer, this is a concept spiritually. Rak be'es katoira v'atshuva v'izbodedus. Rather, it's a time of being involved in the study of Torah and doing tshuva and being alone with one's creator. V'chein koso harav Rabbeinu Yoina Zal. So too, the Rav Rabbeinu Yoina, who was a Rishon, he wrote the Shari Tshuva and so on. So the Rebbe is going to explain that essentially there is the specialness of the day, that the specialness of the day brings out the particular activities of the day. So that's where he's going to, let's skip over to the paragraph after the next paragraph. If the intention of what it says in the Siddur of the Arizal is just not to go to work during these days, to be involved in Torah study and Tshuva, and being alone with Hashem, he could have just said, devote your time during the Aseres Yemai Teshuvah to Torah, to Tshuva. Don't be involved in mundane matters. But over here, the Siddur of the Arizal adds, by way of introduction, that the days are like Chol Hamoed. In the Chol Hamoed, concerning Chol Hamoed, the fact that it doesn't have to, that it's not a time where we're supposed to be fully involved in work. Therefore, the obligation, Torah and mitzvahs and davening is greater Then other days of the week is brought down Shulchan Aruch that during Chol Hamoed, it's a time when we're supposed to add in our Torah learning. Arizal mesuvav minyan shel Chol Hamoed. This idea that it's not a time of doing work, it's a time of adding and learning. It's all a result of the first point. It's Chol Hamoed. Because it's Chol Hamoed, therefore we don't do the type of work that we would do in the ordinary day. Therefore, we have to add in Torah mitzvahs and davening. And by extension, the Rebbe wants to say the same idea about Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, that Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, its state is a state like Chol Hamoed, and therefore they said not to do work and to be involved in Torah and so on. And this is similar, the Rebbe is about to say, to Yom Tov. But the idea, the concept of what causes what. Might be Yom Tov, just like a Yom Tov. The prohibition to do work is not because there's an obligation to increase in Torah. Why don't we do work on Yom Tov? It's not because we have to learn more Torah. That's why we can't work. It's the other way around. The order is just the opposite. Since it's a Yom Tov and sanctified Mikra Kodesh, it's called a holy time. Therefore, there's a command, you should not do any work in it, except on Yom Tov, where work having to do with food preparation is permitted. Similar to this, concerning Chol Hamoed, Chol Hamoed is also part of Yom Tov. It's part of Sukkot. It's part of Pesach. Though it doesn't say in it Mikra Kodesh, let's skip over 2 lines to after the parentheses, to the second line, to the next line, in other words. To such an obligation, there's an halacha brought down. There's an obligation to drink wine, to Simcha, to fulfill the obligation of the joy of Yom Tov, that you should rejoice in your Yom Tov. It's a positive command in our Torah, also in Chol Hamoed. This is the source of where the whole idea came from, to take our children on trips on Chol Hamoed, because it's a mitzvah to make the family happy. Because of this comes out the result, the outcome concerning the type of the lessening of work, skip the parentheses, and therefore how much Torah we do. So the point that the Rebbe is saying over here is that Yom Tov and Chol Hamoed, they are holy days, and because they are holy days, they have certain obligations like joy, and therefore it also results in not doing work. It results in increasing in Torah and so on. Now the Rebbe is going to apply that same thing concerning Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. Since the Arizal, or the Siddur of the Arizal, it compares it to Chol Hamoed, so we need to realize that is the focus. The focus is that these days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur have their own sanctity and holiness that lift it up to a stature of Chol Hamoed. According to this, according to this comes out an unbelievable interpretation idea in these few lines that says in the Siddur Arizal. Since the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are like Chol Hamoed, in Kishem Shechol Hamoed, Yesh Yom Tov b'shleimusa b'tchilosei lefanav u'b'soifei la'achrav, just like Chol Hamoed has in it a complete Yom Tov at the beginning, meaning before Chol Hamoed begins, and at the end, after Chol Hamoed concludes. To use an English expression, it's bookended. It's bookended by Yom Tov. So too, it's also concerning these 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Yemei Rosh Hashanah, it has before that the days of Rosh Hashanah. Shaleim Nemar, concerning the days of Rosh Hashanah, it says in Nehemiah, Chedvus Hashem imu uschem, that Ezra told the people about Rosh Hashanah, It's the joy of Hashem, which is your strength. That also it's understood concerning Yom Kippur that follows the Aseres Yemai Teshuvah is also a time of joy, and it bookends the days of Chol Hamoed in between. From this comes out the result, the lessening of work by Safa B'Ribui Torah V'Izbados, and the increase of matters of Torah and being alone with Hashem, etc. This concept that we just now explained gives a little bit of an insight and explanation on something that at first glance is not understood. But Rosh Hashanah ein lahaskir in Yom Shel Chaykuch. We know on Rosh Hashanah we are not supposed to mention any matters of Averis. We don't say Al Chayshachatan L'Fanecha. We don't say those parts of Avinu Malkeinu that someone would say during Aseres Yemai Teshuvah that mention sin. We don't say it during Rosh Hashanah. The simple reason behind it is since it's a day of joy, like we said before, it's the joy of Hashem, which is your strength. Therefore, Rosh Hashanah, we make a bracha Shechiyanu because it's indicative of the Simcha of the day. So that's why we don't mention any matters of sin, which is not compatible with the idea of joy. Though we find concerning many halachas that Rosh Hashanah is actually not a time of Simcha. What do we see? For example, concerning the part of davening called Chol Doidi, that when a Rosh Hashanah falls on Shabbos, and when Yom Tov corresponds with Shabbos, at the end, the last part of the Chadoidi, over there's a piece that you switch. Instead of Berin of its all, you say Besimcha of its all. But when Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos, since it's not, Rosh Hashanah is not an explicit time of joy, so therefore we do not say Besimcha, we do not replace the word Berina with Simcha, we read like an ordinary Shabbos Berin. Along with the fact that certain things reflect that Rosh Hashanah is not times of Simcha, there's also on Rosh Hashanah the idea of joy. Let's explain the Torah. I believe we learned this in our Shiurim, that the joy on Rosh Hashanah is in a way of rejoicing with trembling. There has to be the idea of rejoicing. Rather, it's covered in the idea of trembling. Internally, it's a matter of joy. Seemingly, how can we ask of a Jew to be on Rosh Hashanah in an approach of joy, not taking consideration all those matters that are not the way they're supposed to be? For example, the idea of sin. Since the Torah of truth asks of us to be joyous on Rosh Hashanah, so he's not just faking it. There has to be by him a state of true joy. So how does this fit? One of the explanations in this is this was because of the preparation that took place during the month of El. On the pasuk that said about the Ashes Yifas Toyar, says she shall cry her father and her mother for a month of days. The Arizal explains, immovable to the Torah, like it's brought down the Torah. Shekoy al Chodesh El, it's referring to the month of El. Hacham Reish Chodesh El, beginning from the first day of El, Sheboy Maskal Zakarn al Arboim Yom Hashlishim Shayim Moshe Rabbeinu Bahar. That then is the commemoration for the third set of 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was in Har Sinai. The first 40 days was from the 7th of Sivan till Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. The second set was from Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, from Shivas B'Tammuz. I'm sorry. First set was from the 7th of Sivan till Shivas B'Tammuz. The second set was from the 18th of Tammuz till Rosh Chodesh El. The third set was from Rosh Chodesh El through Yom Kippur. Aleim Namar, concerning the third set of 40 days, it says, Ma Rishonim B'Rotzen, Abachronim B'Rotzen, just like the first set of 40 days. Before the Yidden even did the sin of the Egel, it was in a way that was accepted by Hashem and beloved by Hashem. So too, the third set of 40 days, where Moshe Rabbeinu was beseeching Hashem for the final forgiveness, it was also in a way of acceptance by Hashem as well. Even Shaydei Avodah Shel Chodesh El Misbatlim Kol Inyanim Shel Ched, since through the avoid of the month of El, all matters of sin cease, are removed, and so it's understood that there's no place to mention a Rosh on a matter of a sin. Because already the last day of the previous year on Erev Rosh Hashanah, we already have the complete and total forgiveness. That's why there's no reason why we mention sin on Rosh Hashanah. That's also going to be the reason why Rosh Hashanah has to do with a true feeling of joy. And the Rebbe adds, even more so, the way it came out this year, and the same thing was in Tafshin Lamed Gimel, the Frat Rosh Hashanah, especially on Rosh Hashanah, that coincides with Shabbos. Then there's no need even to request those requests of Avinu Malkeinu. When Rosh Hashanah comes out on Shabbos, we leave out the whole Avinu Malkeinu. All those requests we leave out. Why is that so? Even Shabbos, because Shabbos itself already accomplishes whatever we would normally need to accomplish through the requests of Avinu Malkeinu, similar to how shofar, even though we don't blow shofar on Rosh Hashanah comes on Shabbos, it's automatically accomplished through Shabbos. According to this, understood how even the weekdays that's between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur can be like Chol Hamoed. And we mentioned before, Shemei Chol Hamoed, Hem Yemai Simcha, that the days of Chol Hamoed are days of joy. Al Kol Panim K'may Simcha Shemei Rosh Hashanah, at least they have the type of joy like the days of Rosh Hashanah. How come? How are we joyous? Like we said before, the Kivim Shakadosh Baruch Hu Salach Machal V'Kippur Al Yonim built to the Tzuyim Farm Erev Rosh Hashanah, since Hashem already forgave us for all negative things already on the eve of Rosh Hashanah. Even in such a manner, that the year ceased with all the negative things. Begins the year in all of its brachas. And the first bracha is Hashem benches us and makes us successful in the study of Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs. Therefore, we don't have to be sad because of sins. Let's skip over to the next paragraph. Zai afilu hayamim shebein Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippurim, 2 paragraphs on the bottom of the page. Even the days between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, hem k'may Chol Hamoed, that's like Chol Hamoed. Shebo yesh na'achiv d'chasmak b'chagecha. Then there's the obligation that you shall rejoice in your Yom Tov. B'dugmas hayom Tov shebay maskel Chol Hamoed, similar to the Yom Tov with which Chol Hamoed begins. In other words, Chol Hamoed needs to reflect the joy of the Yom Tov that began the Chol Hamoed. So Rosh Hashanah began our Chol Hamoed now of Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. So Rosh Hashanah as well is a time of joy, and the same thing as Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. Simcha should be Yom Melu, similar to this concerning the joy in these days. Al Kulpanim by from the Gila Barada, at least the type of joy that we have is in a way of rejoicing with trembling, like the joy on Rosh Hashanah. So now the Rebbe is going to ask the other way. On Rosh Hashanah, we didn't say certain things because of the joy, but during Aseres Yemai Teshuvah we do. We need to understand. Why do we recite Tachnun, the supplication prayers, in the 7 days between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur? The L'chura Ma'achar Shem Chol Hamoed, since they're like Chol Hamoed and Chol Hamoed, we don't recite Tachnun. Then there's no room for saying Tachnun. The explanation of this is it's known what's explained concerning the expression forgive us our Father because we sinned. Seemingly it's more appropriate the expression since we sinned, or some similar language. So in other words, when you're saying forgive us because we sinned, it sounds like we're saying please forgive us because we were bad. Because we were bad is a reason not to forgive us. Forgive us since we were bad, so we need your forgiveness. So the explanation about this is, when do we say Slach Lana V'in Chetonu? We say it during Shemoneh Esrei. Lefi Shvamodim Atzavi Lefnei Shemoneh Esrei Ein Etzli In Shalchet. The truth is, by the time the Yid reaches to daven Shemoneh Esrei, and he's holding by the bracha of Slach Lanu, he's already beyond sin. He already asked for forgiveness. He already took care of his sins. Only when he approaches to stand Shemoneh Esrei, then he is elevated to a higher level, like a servant standing before his master. Then he grabs hold of himself, and he senses that state and situation prior to this. The way he was when he was reciting Krishma, and when he was reciting the brachas of Krishma prior to Krishma and the brachas after Krishma. And how much more so B'Psukei de Zimra, his state that he was when he was reciting the parts of davening from Baruch Shamar to Yishtabach. It's like someone that moves his finger in a circle in front of the king. In other words, he's doing something minor, but still he's doing it in the presence of the king, and therefore it's inappropriate. Since by Shemoneh Esrei he's already standing in front of the king, then he's asking them, forgive us because we sinned on matters that before Shemoneh Esrei were not considered as a sin. In other words, like this: before Shemoneh Esrei, he was in a state that he was completely pure. Now that he rose up to a higher level, so now he's in a state of a sin. So that's what we're saying. Slach Lanu Avinu. Now we're asked forgiveness because now we finally realize, now we finally see how we are lacking and imperfect. So the Rebbe says, so too is the concerning, we say Tachnun in the days between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, it's concerning such matters that up till now, before he reached the most highest level, he was able to and he had to act in such a manner that's appropriate for this higher level. So that's what he is asking, and that's what he's begging for forgiveness, because and saying Tachnun for in the Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, not for doing bad, but for things that now are insufficient, being that he's in a higher level. So the Rebbe gives a very simple example by using the metaphor of the king in the field. Essentially, he says that we are, when we're in the field, there's one way how we dress, but then it says after the king is in the field, and after we greet the king in the field, we follow him into his royal palace. It's self-understood that the way the person is dressed when they are in the field is not the same how they have to be dressed in the royal palace. So what was good for the field is not good enough for the royal palace. So what was good and what we accomplished and what we cleansed and what we purified in the month of El is still insufficient for the times of in between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur. So let's read this in cycle. For example, when the Gale close, I'm the Matzah Shel Chodesh El v'Chodesh Tishrei concerning the general state and situation of the month of El and the month of Tishrei. B'Chodesh El she'az nimtzayim bnei Yisrael b'sad, in the month of El that Yidden are found then in the field. There they meet up with the King of Kings, the Eibishter. Like the Alter Rebbe explains the idea of the month of El by the way of an analogy of a king that we greeted him in the field. Then we are dressed in garments that are appropriate for field work. We wear dungarees, we wear farmers type of clothing, etc. And just the opposite, not only are we allowed to wear such clothes, we should wear such clothes. According to Shulchan Aruch, because the laws of not destroying things, we cannot wear nice garments, expensive garments when we're involved in field work. Like it's known, the story of someone in the Gemara by name of Abba Chilkia. There's a story in the Gemara about how a person would protect his clothes when he went to work in the field. So we see that great tzaddikim were very careful about their clothing when they were involved in field work. But when one enters the city, especially when one enters the royal palace, it's impossible to remain with the very same garments. That same type of way of going, the same type of actions. Like in the month of El, from the perspective of El, this was perfect. There's a need to go up from strength to strength. Appropriate to the state and situation of the month of Tishrei. How much more so, how we have to be higher in the beginning of Tishrei, the days following it, Ad Yom Kippurim till Yom Kippur. Such a manner is also the avoid of tshuva in these days. It's not tshuva for negative things, unwanted things. It's a tshuva that it's idea about going from strength to strength, in holiness and in good itself. And to such a degree, what it says about the spiritual return to the Eibishter that gave it, that's the highest level of tshuva, the tshuva of going up to the highest, most place. Move on, and it's understood, Shem is voided. That in addition to the fact that he is alone with Hashem, and he increases in Torah study and the service of David, and being extra care and beauty in fulfillment of mitzvahs. He stands in such a state and situation that all of his matters are permeated with a great and unbelievable joy. Even though it's in a way of trembling, because now he finds himself in the royal city, in the capital city, and he entered the royal palace. Since he already incarnated the king, to make me a king over you. During the days of Rosh Hashanah, and he's readying himself for the inner level of coronation of the king. The Rebbe is about to say that there's two levels in coronation. One level is Rosh Hashanah, and the inner level of the coronation is Yom Kippur. We find in the Torah, we find in Tanakh that Yom Kippur is also called by the title Rosh Hashanah, and therefore Just like Rosh Hashanah, as we know Rosh Hashanah, the first of Tishrei is the coronation of the king, so too Yom Kippur is also the coronation of the king. Elishu b'chinas hapnimius, rather it's the inner level. Hapnimius shalmei Rosh Hashanah, the inner level of the days of Rosh Hashanah. Pnimius harosh, the inner level of the head. Legabe inyan harosh kefishu b'Rosh Hashanah, in comparison to the head, the way it's on Rosh Hashanah. Next paragraph. Okay. In addition to what he increased in regards to his state and situation on El, because of his state and situation on Rosh Hashanah. In other words, Rosh Hashanah made him get to a higher level than whatever he was in El. In El, he was still in the field. Rosh Hashanah, he's in the royal palace. It doesn't stop him. He is increasing, going up from strength to strength, also in the intermediate days. The days of preparation for the state and situation that's out of the inner level of Rosh Hashanah. Being assured that he's going along with the King of Kings, the Eibishter Medarga, from level to level, until Ne'ilah of Yom Kippur, until he reaches Shana Rabbah, Shmini Atzeres, the Maimed of Matzav Sheisrael and Malta B'Chidoy. At the time of Shmini Atzeres, it's only Hashem and the Yidden alone. The Hashem and the Yidden stand in the same state and situation to be helpful. Metaphorically speaking, similar to the teachings of musician Magid concerning the two silver trumpets that he explains. The word chatzotzros can be divided into two words. That the Jewish people in Hashem are like two half forms. They're two halves of one thing. That by combining both of them together, they become a complete thing. So therefore, this is the aliyah and the elevation. We're going higher and higher and doing it in a way of joy. Now the Rebbe is going to connect it with the yard site. Tonight, the Rebbe said this actually at the end of the yard site. He said it on Thursday night, but we're learning this on the eve of the yard site. Yard site. This is also applicable to a yard site. Skip over to the next paragraph, the last paragraph. All yard site, every yard site, the neshama goes up to a much higher level, incomparable to what it was prior to the yard site. This means, in addition to the ascent, to the elevation that the neshama goes through in Gan Eden every single day, on the yard site, the neshama goes up on the yard site in an incomparably higher way, higher level. And therefore, despite the perfection of the state of the neshama in comparison to the world that it was in now, in mitzad aliyasa la'olam naila yoser, because of its ascent to a higher world, midreshes memena shleimus gedola yoser. So it's demanded of the neshama a greater perfection and completion. That's why we do all the things on a yard site for the sake of the neshama, to like assist that elevation by dehan yon sha'osim b'kesher mimashana, through the things that we do in connection with a yard site. Mashlimim gam shleimazu, we also reach this higher perfection and completion that it's reaching now on this new level. And corresponding to this elevation and the things that we do for the neshama to rise up higher, there are two ways of acting in regards to a yard site. Just like there are two ways of acting in concerning to the Aseres Yemai Teshuvah. There's a way of doing things in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah that's by many Yidden, but that it's in a way of bitterness, etc. There's slichas, there's other things that people keep away from Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, and it's based on halacha and Shulchan Aruch. It's based on what it says in Sfarim. But there's also a way of doing things that's appropriate for it, that they're like days of Chol Hamoed, meaning acting in Aseres Yemai Teshuvah that's appropriate to days of joy, the days of celebration, the holy days of joyous occasions. Well, so, like for example, by us, even though by many people they say slichas during Aseres Yemai Teshuvah, we don't. So similar to the fact that in the yard side there's also two approaches. If in a way of bitterness, the opposite of joy. People don't do joyous things on a yard side. Some people have a custom to fast on a yard side. Or the opposite is done on a yard side. In the expression that's known by Polish Chassidim, that they place tikkun. In other words, they place l'chaim in the shul. In other words, it's a time of rejoicing. And despite the fact that by Chassidim our approach to a yard site is in a way of joy, it's not contradictory to our custom that on yard site we say tachnon. Seemingly, how does it fit in with the idea of tikkun, that we say l'chaim and we rejoice and so on? Like the Rebbe says, I already related once. I asked my father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, what's the idea of saying tachnon on a yard site? We call a yard site, especially a yard site of a tzaddik, we call it yom hilula, etc. So actually, by other chassidim, by Polish chassidim, when it comes to yard site of a tzaddik, they don't say tachnon. There's some people that have yard site books to make sure that they have as many days of the year where they can get out saying a tachnon, because they have different yard sites to celebrate. But by us, we don't. We say tachnon on the day of a yard site. So even of a tzaddik. So the Rebbe asked his father-in-law, Rebbe asked the Frierdiker Rebbe, why do we say tachnon on a yard site? But Ambar, and the Frierdiker Rebbe said, yes, man, is there then a better time, a more auspicious time, to request and to manage to bring about all the things that we are requesting in tachnon? Behind this means why are we saying tachnon? It's just the opposite. It's not a matter of sadness. It's a matter of joy because of the ascent and the elevation. And through that, because of the joy and elevation, we affect all the matters that we say on tachnon. It should be the will of Hashem. Through increasing in Torah study and being in beautification of the mitzvahs and the avoid of davening, and everything is connected to it. Arizal, and like the expression used in the Siddur Arizal, Eiska Torah Vatshuva is Bodus, being involved in Torah and Tshuva, and being alone, Shapirish Apashpazo is Bodus, Minyana Olam from Welt and Weltlichkeit. The simple meaning in it is being separated from matters of the world, from world and worldliness. These are like Chol Hamoed. Simcha should be out of joy. Simcha al pi Torah, Simcha according to Torah, but if in the Gilu Barad in such a way that we're being rejoicing and trembling. Simcha Peretz together, according to what's said many times, that joy breaks through boundaries. In Hafilu Eitzel Eilushim Eizes Sibishatia Yeshna Adain Geder Shetzarech Lifretzos. Even by those that there's, for whatever reason, some type of fence that they still need to break through, they still feel trapped or bound or constricted. In Aidei Simchazu, through this joy, Yifritzu Yevatlus Agdarim Achrein Shnishra Adain, they will burst forth and they will nullify the last fences and limitations that still remain. They will come to the true broadness and breadth and comfort the way it's above. And they'll bring down this broadness down here below 10 handbreadths until we fulfill the promise. Yerushalayim will be an open city. It won't have to be constricted and constrained by walls anymore, because there will be peace, becoming a Mashiach, Bakar of Mamish, Bagol Didan.
Amen. Amen. Amen.